step beyond in a lot of cases. And I want my readers to be more familiar with that, the cutting edge of reality. I want it to inspire you to think more about our deepest human flaws and how those get in the way of our highest potential. Basically, I want this story to change your life. Why else are we here?
Prologue, August 2010. In the distance, Percy Mackenzie could see thermal waves rising from the vast, flat, concrete flight line of Luke Air Force Base, Arizona. They'd been sitting in air-conditioned buildings all morning, so his skin welcomed the dry 105-degree air. The last time I was here, he thought, this airfield was on fire. He closed his eyes, opened them again, and took a deep, quiet breath. He noticed motion in his left periphery, and he straightened himself a little. Lined up on his right were his wife, Maggie, his adopted daughter, Nabaa, and his father, retired Air Force Colonel Michael Mackenzie. On his left, immediately next to the red-carpeted steps attached to the stair truck, were Lieutenant Colonel Paul Wooters, the commander of Luke's Security Forces Squadron, and Tom Tulloch, the commander of the entire installation. A huge armored sedan slowed to a stop to Percy's right. A few men in dark suits stood loosely around it. Other men in dark suits approached from the rest of the motorcade and gathered in the shade next to the stairs. United States President Christopher Brennan emerged from the open door of Air Force One and descended the steps. At the bottom, he returned salutes from both military officers and shook their hands, quickly but warmly. Then he turned to Percy and beamed. "Good to see you, man," Brennan said, grabbing Percy's outstretched hand. "You too, sir," Percy said. Brennan let go and locked eyes with Maggie. "And you as well, Mrs. Mackenzie." He held out an upturned hand in a gentlemanly fashion. "Oh, no, sir," Maggie said. She outstretched her arms, leaned in, and forcefully embraced Brennan, who laughed and squeezed her back. "It's my policy," she said into his ear. "Anybody involved with my daughter's rescue gets a hug." Maggie released the president and, still holding his shoulders, showed him her most thankful smile. He beamed back, then took another step and turned to Nabaa. "And it's a sincere pleasure to finally see you again, young lady." Nabaa glanced at Maggie, then held out her hand. Brennan shook it and let go, still smiling. "Not quite the hugger your mom is, huh?" "Percy has a rule," Nabaa said. She clasped her hands behind her waist. "He and Grandpa Mike are the only guys I hug until I am 16. "Pretty good policy," Brennan said, glancing over at Percy. "You can consider the President of the United States an exception to that rule," Percy said to Nabaa, "but always err on the side of caution, right?" She nodded politely. There's no rule against smiling, Percy thought. But he knew she was still uncertain about all of this, despite all his pleas and explanations. She had no interest in coming back here. She didn't understand why he wanted to, why he had to give the speech after all this time. So he had tried to persuade her. "Fear can't be our guide," he'd said many times in many forms. "You'll feel better afterward. I'll feel better afterward. We'll close a book that needs to be closed." She told him he was being prideful, that fear was smart sometimes. She always let him have the last word, but he knew he hadn't convinced her. He'd barely convinced himself. Nabaa was here because Maggie asked her to relent, but she wouldn't pretend to be happy about it. Percy couldn't blame her. It was a lot for him to ask of her, coming back here just a few months after the attack. And Maggie, too. This better go well. Brennan turned to the elder Mackenzie. "Colonel Mackenzie, I'm so glad we finally get to meet. Heard a lot about you." "Is that right?" Michael said, shaking the president's hand. "Yeah, it sure is," Brennan said. "When I heard this boy of yours was basically raised by a single dad, I had to learn a little about the hero behind the hero. Well done, Mike." "Oh, I just tried to survive the teenage years mostly," he said. "His mother did a pretty damn good job before she died." "I don't doubt it." They both glanced at Percy, who smiled and nodded. "Excuse me, Mr. President," Colonel Tulloch said. "I believe this is where we say farewell for now, but we'll be here to see you off later on." "Of course, Colonel," Brennan said. "And Paul," he turned to Wooters. "We'll chat then, okay?" Wooters said, "Absolutely, sir." He and Tulloch rendered a departing.